Well, good evening. Glad you could join me. This is a little Wednesday devotion, a little different than one we've looked at before. This is Psalm 21. This devotion was written for Wednesday, November the 4th, as we begin a new month here, and we've just been kind of going through the Psalms, and I'm trying to show you how you can use them devotionally. Yes, there's a lot of technical things there, and you look in commentary, but how can it feed you? What is it the Holy Spirit of God is saying to you? One interpretation, but maybe many applications, we say, by the Holy Spirit of God, as He can point to things in your own life. And that's what I want you to kind of learn, to use these on your own. That first devotional book that everybody had right there in the Holy Scriptures is to be able to turn again to the Psalms and to glean from it what you need for your daily lives. And trying to accomplish that again in your lives this morning. This psalm is a little different. This is truly been called a messianic psalm. It's actually been called a psalm of ascension. Now, what do I mean when I say ascension? Ascending, about the rising up of the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, His rising up to be exalted to the right hand of the Father. But David wrote it, and it's about kings. And in one sense, it's about God's care of His kings and the kings of Israel, David being one of those kings. So it's a psalm for a king. We say, well, I'm not a king. How can that apply to me? Well, there are some things that we can glean for our lives. Plus, we can rejoice in our King, Jesus Christ. So again, that's different ways that you apply it. Okay, so it's about the king. Yes, but we can learn from this psalm that is about the king as we apply those things. So it begins, this psalm of ascension, about the King of Kings. It also has in it, I think, the secret or the guarantee of victory. A king that rules well will get victories given to him by God if he humbles himself and gives God all the glory and doesn't rely on his strength, but rely on God's strength. So it's true of a king, but it's also true of me in my own life. I mean, I may not be conquering armies like David did and securing the nation so that his son Solomon could take the throne and reign in peace. But we face things in our lives every day, whether it be at work, at school, at home, in our town that we may be ministering in, and we can apply those same principles. If it works for the king, it works for me. So we begin then this by rejoicing in the Lord, and right away there's a king, a person who lives their life rejoicing in the Lord, not out there exhausting themselves by their own strength, by the strength of their own right arm, but by relying on God's strength. And in relying on God's strength, we can be at peace, no worries, if we have faith, and we can rejoice in God. So, O Lord, it begins, the king rejoices in your strength. Now, that's great. I mean, we need to really think about that. The king rejoices in God, not in his strength. How many kings, though, rejoice in God's strength? Oh, they rejoice in their strength. How wealthy their empire is, what kind of great army they have, better than any other army. And, oh yeah, we can do this. We can have victory because we're the greatest. No, not this king. This king rejoices in God's strength. It doesn't matter how many chariots, cavalry, and infantry that they have. It matters whether or not they're resting in God's strength and letting God face those enemies. Wow, pretty important. And it applies to our lives as well. O Lord, the king rejoices in your strength. How great is his joy in the victories you give. Not the victories that he goes out. We're going to go out and conquer the world. We come out of high school with our diploma. We go on to college, and summa cum laude, we've got our doing our little notches, getting our little certificates. And boy, we're going to, no. Lord, I give you the glory, and I rejoice in that you got me through that, and I never should have got through any of that. It's victory given to you, Lord. I give you the wreath, the crowns for those victories. It was in your strength, or I couldn't have done it on my own. Wow, see, there's a different philosophy of life. There's one that is focused in on me and me doing it, and there's another philosophy that focuses in on the Lord and rejoices in him and rejoices in his strength. That's a key to victory. Okay, see where I'm going with this? Okay, it's about a king. You have granted him, the king, the desires of his heart. You have not withheld the request of his lips. You hear his prayers, but that's the prayers of a king who's not being a king in his own strength, who's not taking credit for those victories, but giving all the credit to God. You hear the prayers of a humble king. You have granted him the desires of heart. You have not withheld the request of his lips. You welcomed him with rich blessings. You placed a crown of pure gold on his head. And again, they see in that many commentary talk the Ascension, when Jesus Christ humbled himself on the cross for us and was exalted to the right hand of the Father, who crowned him with many crowns, we sing, crowned him King of Kings, who put him at the right hand and put everything under subjection to his Messiah, his anointed, his King. So the messianic portion of this psalm, he asked, but also true of David. And God exalted him to the throne over Israel, again foreshadowing or looking forward to or allusions to, poetically, to another king, the King of Kings. He asked you for life, and you gave it to him. To preserve your Holy One. Don't let him see corruption. Length of days, and not only length of days you gave him, forever and ever. What? That's talking about everlasting life. Your king who you raised from the dead is everlasting. And it's interesting, a kingdom of a royal priesthood, a kingly priesthood, he gave us everlasting life too, if we trust in him and rejoice in him. Through the victories you gave. And again, that's important. Who gave you the victories? Well, I've had this victory and that victory, and I got this trophy and that trophy. All my trophies belong to God. You gave them. Or I couldn't have done it myself. Again, that humble heart that gives God the credit for all those victories. Through the victories you gave, his glory is great. You have bestowed on him splendor and majesty because he was humble and because he gave God all the credit and because he rejoiced in the Lord. And God was his strength. Surely you have granted him eternal blessings. And notice those blessings that don't go away. There are lots of temporary blessings in this life, but he's talking about eternal blessings, looking beyond this life. Eternal blessings, and made him glad with the joy of your presence. That experiencing the presence of God in our lives is enough, and that is the greatest joy. For the king trusts in the Lord. That's key. Our faith is to be in the Lord. He gives the victory. He gives the life. He hears our prayers. His strength, not mine. And I'm trusting in his strength. He's almighty. So God's got it covered if I trust him. For the king trusts in the Lord. Through the unfailing love of the Most High, he will not be shaken, because my God is a God of love. Regardless of what enemies come up against me and surround me, I will not be shaken. True of David, true of the Messiah as they surrounded him at the cross. If you don't want to be shaken up, it's abiding in God's love and God's strength by faith. Remember, for the king trusts in the Lord. True kingship is humbly trusting in the Lord, not in one's own strength. And so we see for all the kings of Israel that followed, they were just kind of poor, flawed shadows of the true king to come. Some were bad, some were good, most were bad, a few were good. As we see that change, as we study Judas, all looking forward to, is there another out there? Is there another king to come? And of course there is, one who will be exalted by God to the right hand. And that would be Jesus Christ, the anointed of all anointed. And David looked forward to that, talking about his kingship and all God had done for him and how he trusted in God and humbled himself and trusted God for the victories, but also foreshadowing that King of Kings, of which all the others are just poor representations of. One who rejoiced, a true king, one who rejoiced in the Lord and gave him all the honor and all the victories. Wow, imagine a king that does that. Doesn't take credit for his own victories. Oh, my mighty army did this. because I'm such a good leader. No, 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 no. A king totally submitted unto the Lord and giving God all the glory. Imagine that. One who trusts in the Lord, Yahweh, that is I am, the great I am. His faith is in the Lord, a man of faith, one who trusts in the unfailing love of the Most High. Therefore, he will not be shaken. As you put all those things together, if you don't want to be shaken up in this life and be able to stand firm and never be shaken, it's standing strong in God's strength. Our strength is weak and we are frail. So I think that there's some great lessons here, not only for a king, and every king should take note of these things, but also for us as we look to those kings for examples, and as we look to the King of Kings as the ultimate example who lived these truths out as well. So secondly, not only do we see rejoicing in the Lord and rejoicing in his strength and giving him all the honor, but now in verses 8 through 12, there is a certain anticipation for future blessings. Well, that's again that faith thing. A king, a true king, would trust in the Lord, but he trusts in the Lord in such a way that he's anticipating the fulfillment of all those things because he believes. It's not, well, I hope, I wish, maybe it'll work out. No, no, no. I believe it. It's as good as done, even though it hasn't happened yet. So I have this anticipation of that which has not happened yet, but I know it will because God's words are true. Wow, that's faith. An anticipation of that which is to come as being fulfilled because God said so. So in verses 8 through 12, we have this anticipation of future blessing. Your hand will lay hold on all your enemies. Your right hand will seize your foes. And there was anticipation of victories. At the time of your appearing, you will make them like a fiery furnace. In his wrath, the Lord will swallow them up, and his fire will consume them. You will destroy their descendants from the earth, their posterity from mankind. All your enemies are going to be brought low. So he will reign till every enemy is put under his feet. And that victory is already assured. And there's an anticipation that when he appears, at the time of your appearing, justice will be done. Scales will be balanced. All enemies will be put under his feet. Though they plot evil against you, though we're surrounded by evil, even as David was surrounded by evil and assassins, and they plotted against him, but even so the Messiah, from the earliest days of his ministry, they plotted somehow, how can we kill this Jesus of Nazareth without causing a big stir among the people? They plotted against him. Though they plot evil against you and devise wicked schemes, they cannot succeed. Even though God's way of answering that through the cross, that he would be exalted to the right hand and made king, and all victory would be given to him, to his enemies are put under. Wow, who would have devised a plan like that? It looked like he lost on that Friday when he gave up the ghost, and they had to get him down and hurry up and get him buried before the Sabbath. Didn't want to, break the Sabbath law. Got to do all that religious stuff. Got to hurry up and kill the Messiah and stick him in a tomb because we don't want to, mess up our day of worship. Religion does that. But none of their plans can succeed. That in the end, the victory is all of God. Our victory is to trust in God, even as was the Messiah. For you will make them turn their backs when you aim at them with a drawn bow. And that's an interesting idiom. We're not too familiar with that. There's a bunch of talk in the commentary. What does that mean, they'll turn their backs? I mean, they know that when judgment falls, they know that they can't even defend themselves. They might as well just turn their back and let you shoot them in the back. Because there's no fighting against the Lord. They're so overwhelmed. And again, we're not exactly sure how that idiom was used in their day and what it means today. But no one can have victory over God, being the point. David was God's anointed, and God put him on the throne to secure the kingdom for Israel, that his son Solomon might take the throne and reign in peace. Nobody could thwart that. Even though David was surrounded by many enemies, got discouraged many times, he kept coming back in his Psalms to trusting God and rejoicing in him. He'd start out kind of depressed, and then he would turn to who God is. God's God of love, God's mercy, compassion. He's almighty. I'll put my trust in him. Victory is assured. Again, kind of a similar pattern, but different, because Psalm 21 is a little bit different here. But again, it applies not only to King David, it applies to the Messiah, it applies to us. If we trust in the Lord by faith, we have reason for rejoicing. If we don't trust in our strength, it will fail us, and we're just going to wear ourselves out anyway. But learning to rest in God and His plan, it's a done deal. And I anticipate everything to be fulfilled exactly as God said so, and no man can thwart that. So I can kind of chill a little bit. I can relax in God, who is the righteous judge, who's going to balance the scales. That's His job. My job in the meantime is just to trust in Him, and I can glean that from this psalm. And then Psalm 21, that began with rejoicing in the Lord and moved on to anticipation of a future blessing, that God is going to fulfill all these things. And then thirdly, because of that, it ends in a vow of praise. Therefore, I can spend my life praising God for a victory that hasn't happened yet, maybe, but it's going to happen because I believe in Him. Wow. Wow. Be exalted, O Lord, giving Him, offering up all the victory to Him, offering up everything that is accomplished in their life. It was God that did that. Be exalted, O Lord. In your strength we will sing and praise of your might. Wow. Not my strength, not what I'm going to do, not power of positive thinking I'm going to go out here. Not that there's anything wrong with having a good attitude, but I'm saying it's trusting that God is going to do this because He said so, and I trust Him. Be exalted. Be exalted. And again, the king, as this is talking about the king here, the statesman, the leader, whatever you call him, the one who humbly exalts the Lord and not himself, will get the victory. So we will sing and we will praise of God's might. You know, how many kings and potentates today talk about, and that's all they talk about, are themselves. And look what I've done. I've done this, and I've done... No, you haven't done anything. Okay? You wouldn't be able to tie your shoes if it wasn't for the Lord, if He hadn't willed it. So why don't you give God the credit? Because of pride. Man's sinful pride. This is about a king who's not prideful. This is about the king who is victorious because he gives all the credit where credit is due. To the Lord, our strength. It's because of Him, and it's because of Him. Powerful, powerful song. So we will sing and we will praise God's might and God's power. Be exalted, O Lord. And part of that exalting, I will exalt you, O Lord, in your strength. I'm exalting you because I'm resting in your strength, not my own. We will sing and praise your might. Man, He gives us the ultimate victory, and ultimately the victory over death to everlasting life, if we believe it. That even when they kill us, or even when my body dies, I have victory because God said so, if I trust in Him and His strength. God bless.